This video is a walkthrough of Form 1040 and at least one attached schedule. So what we have here in front of us is a Form 1040. Let's shrink it down a little bit. There we go. So you can see up here at the top is mostly identification information, right? So name, last name, social security number, address. Presidential election campaign you don't need to worry about, but it doesn't change your tax if you check it or don't check it. Filing status, you should be familiar with that, right? So you would just check the box that is appropriate for the type of taxpayer you're dealing with. From an exemption perspective, these ended in 2017, but you always get an exemption for yourself. If you're married, you get one for your spouse. And then you just fill in exactly what it says. What are the number of boxes checked over here, 6A, 6B? Number of children that lived with you, you fill that in. And then you total those numbers up to get the total number of exemptions claimed. Okay, so as we work our way down the form, you can see the first part is income. And line 7 is wages. So to the extent you earn wages from your employer, you report those right on line 7. It even says attach Form W-2, right? So you know that those come from Form W-2. Lines A and B are about interest. Taxable interest comes from Schedule B. We'll get to Schedule B here in a second. Tax exempt interest is just reported separately, but notice it is not totaled in anything. So that's just an informational piece of reporting that goes in. Ordinary dividends are reported on 9A and qualified dividends are reported on 9B. So again, those come from forms 1099 typically. So you get a 1099 interest for interest, you get a 1099 dividends for dividends. And then we keep marching our way through. If you had a refund of state taxes, it goes on 10. Any alimony you received would go on line 11. We can contrast that real quickly with alimony paid, which goes down here on line 31. Any business income. So if you were self-employed, you had a sole proprietorship, that goes on line 12. Capital gains and losses from Schedule D go on line 13. Other gains and losses, which are business gains and losses from 4797, go on line 14. If you had distributions from an IRA or some form of pension, that's lines 15 and 16. So if you have income from rental real estate royalties and then other forms of flow-through entities, those are reported on line 17. Farm income is obviously on 18, unemployment. On 19, to the extent you receive Social Security benefits, those go on line 20. And then any other income, so line 21 is a catch-all for anything that wasn't reported elsewhere. That gives you total income, right? So you just total those lines up just as it says, right? Just total up lines 7 through 21. What comes next are your adjustments to get to adjusted gross income. So if you're a K through 12 teacher, you have educator expenses. Performing artists can have certain deductions. If you have a HSA, a health savings account, pretty rare, but that would go on line 25. If you moved in 2017, those expenses are deductible. In 2018, they are not anymore. If you're self-employed, a portion of your self-employment tax is deductible. You can expect to see that in a future assignment. Self-employed contributions to your retirement plans go on line 28. Self-employed health insurance goes on line 29. So again, if you're a Schedule C, you might have those. If you have a penalty on withdrawal of savings, not very common. Again, we spoke about 31. If you made a contribution to an IRA that's deductible, it goes on 32. If you have that amazing student loan interest, you can deduct that on line 33. You can see 34 is just a holding block. The D-pad is available if you were, again, you owned a business that you operated. That expired or was repealed, I should say, in 2017, so it's gone for 2018. But then you'd add those up, and that's your adjusted gross income, right? So subtract line 36, which is the total of all those deductions from line 22, which was your total income. That gives you line 37. Welcome to adjusted gross income. That amount simply carries down to line 38. So it just repeats itself here. Then if you meet one of those extra exemption items, so you're old or you're blind, you get an extra exemption. Otherwise, you list your itemized deductions if you do a Schedule A, and you would prepare Schedule A and pull that amount and list it right here on line 40. You'd see on Schedule A there's a cross-reference. Or you just take your standard deduction, and conveniently they place the standard deduction amounts right in the left-hand margin for you. Okay, then do a little math. And then your exemptions, right? So it says figure out what line, what number you had on line 6D. Recall down here on 6D, we entered in our total exemptions. We take that and do just as it says, multiply by 4050. So that would give you your total exemptions. Again, a little math, and then you get to tax. Now, tax can come from a number of places. It can come from the tax tables in the instructions. But if you have qualified dividends or you have capital gains, then you actually need to use a separate spreadsheet called the qualified dividends and capital gain worksheet in order to calculate your tax. And what happens is you literally pull numbers off of different places on the 1040, right? So put in line 43. Put in the line from 9B. If you filed a Schedule D, you'd pick up the items from Schedule D. Otherwise, you do math. 4952, probably not likely for anything in this class. And then you just work your way through this schedule till you get down here at the bottom and it says, hey, figure out what your taxes are. And the way you determine what your taxes are, if it's less than 100,000, then you use the tax tables. Those are located in the Form 1040 instructions. So you would open up the instructions, go find the tax table, find the amount of income on line 7, use your filing status, and determine your tax. Okay, let's go back to the 1040. So once you have your tax, then you start marching through alt-min tax. Probably not going to be something you see in this class. There's a bunch of separate credits. We will talk about those credits, but I'm not likely to make you put any of those on a Form 1040, which means that a lot of these lines, which are really for credits and taxes, right? So all these are a number of tax credits. All these are a separate number of additional taxes beyond income taxes. And then finally, you get to payments. And you can see an important one is the withheld from Form W-2, or if there was any withholding on a 1099, sometimes there is. You just report that there. That gives you total payments to the extent you don't have any other payments. And you can calculate whether you are due a refund or do you owe additional taxes. And that's really it. That's all there is to a 1040. So for lots and lots of taxpayers, there's lots of blank lines, and that's absolutely positively okay. All right, so before we move on, let's just look quickly at a Schedule B. Right, so here's Schedule B. This was the supplemental schedule that you use that reports interest and dividends up. So you can see it says to attach it to the 1040. You simply list the payer. So who is the bank that paid you the interest or the bonds or whatever it might be, and the amount. You do a little math down here at the bottom, and you get the total amount, and it says, look, report that on Form 1040 line 8A, which we just covered. Same with part 2, which is dividends. You'd list the dividend amount. You'd total them up, and you'd carry it over to line 9A. And that's really all there is to it, to the extent there were foreign accounts, which is pretty unlikely. So for the most part, you check no for most taxpayers. All right. That's it. That's a quick walkthrough of the 1040. Hopefully that helps you get through this first tax return assignment.